Good evening. It is Wednesday, October 9th, 2024, 6:04 p.m. Amid some technical difficulties. Quorum of members is present, and I call the Finance Committee Budget Session Number 1 to order. And we have but one item on our agenda, and that is budget discussions and actions regarding recommending a 2025 budget, including setting the 2025 fee schedule. So this evening, we're going to jump right into the capital projects funds. And then I think we'll also kind of segue into the TIDs too this evening.
Yes, because they're
So
mainly capital projects.
That's all encompassing into the capitals. So mostly sort of a presentation format this evening. So we'll turn it over to Mary Ann to deliver
Yeah, we have a
this
lot of
information.
department representatives in the audience, so if people have questions on any projects or purchases proposed in the 25 budget, I think everybody would welcome any questions that you have. So the 2025 budget, as we're working through the budget, we implemented new software this year. And we are in the final phases of review of the final budget document. So we'll have that published for you on Monday. I did pass out a draft copy of the capital portion of the budget. And we'll start with a PowerPoint that kind of follows along with the budget book. We do have a couple of pieces of information that we're still waiting on in the budget that we'll be using estimates for. One is, which is a big one, is our health insurance. We're still waiting on final health insurance numbers, though I believe we will have those sometime next week. And then our assessed value. As you likely know, our city assessor is responsible for valuing individual parcels for residential and commercial property, but the state has the responsibility of valuing all of the manufacturing property in the city. And we have not received the manufacturing value yet from the state. So when you see the budget book next week, I've worked with the city assessor to come up with an estimate, but we'll have estimates there. And again, this was a reval year, so there are kind of dramatic changes from one year to the next. So if we start the capital budget, when we are looking at our capital budget, we break it down into the capital plan that is focused on the general government type of capital, and then we have our enterprise funds, the water, sewer, and motor pool. We're gonna go through all of the capital tonight except for motor pool, and motor pool we're gonna cover on Monday. So the capital plan is consists of the part that, what's the new committee called? INF? INF is responsible for, which is the infrastructure component of the budget, and they basically develop the plan for the next year. And then we have a CIP committee. Departments submit their requests to the CIP committee. If they're over $25,000, the committee reviews all of those requests and ranks them, and then makes recommendations for funding. So this capital plan before you, that's $5.4 million here, is a combination of the projects brought forward by INF and the CIP committee. So you can see that the lion's share of that is infrastructure at $4.6 million. So when we look at the individual projects, again, the largest component being infrastructure, we have two main street projects, and I would say that these are bigger than your average street project. As far as cost is concerned, it is Cherry Street, West Wausau Avenue to Randolph Street, and then West Randolph Street from Burrick Avenue to Merrill Avenue. I don't know how many miles of project that is. Alan, do you want any No idea? Why is this project more expensive than, like, some projects?
Not necessarily that Cherry's more expensive. The main reason Randolph is expensive, there's those double box culverts where the creek goes underneath the road, though. Those are double 72-inch box culverts across the entire length, and they're about 20 feet deep. So we're close to like $700,000 just to replace those two box culverts that go underneath there. That's the main reason that one's more expensive.
Okay. And then, in addition to those two streets, we have our usual maintenance type projects, $600,000 of asphalt overlay, $35,000 for asphalt paving, sidewalk replacement, so this is where they go through the city and replace those sections that are damaged, and then concrete repairs of $300,000 and pavement marking. So that brings us to the $4.6 million. We borrow for that entire amount each year, and it's paid over a 10-year period of time as a promissory note. The rest of the plan is either funded with grants or other revenue sources, but that includes facilities. So these would be the sections of the plan that are managed by the CIP committee. That includes upgrading the door controls at City Hall for $31,000, repairing the City Hall chimney liner for $130,000, making improvements to Athletic Park Clubhouse for $48,000, garage door repairs at DPW for $30,000, phase 1 of the public safety building roof replacement of $50,000, fence and gate replacement at DPW of $35,000. So those are our facility projects. And then equipment and fleet, our Paratech airbags for fire for $20,000, Fire Station 3 cascade system for $54,000, PFAS-free turnout gear for $52,000, a lift at the motor pool for $51,000, a phone system replacement of $150,000, and then the parks rolling stock of $209,000. So the city, in partnership with the county, has agreed to make an annual commitment of that $209,680 for a fleet replacement. So that's basically what that is. So the total there is $5,497,000. We did end up deferring quite a few projects. Oh, yeah, and so as I mentioned, the infrastructure is a general obligation note of $4.6 million. Those other projects, $500,000 for general property tax levy, and then we do have some special assessment income of $379,000. But you can see here, when we look at increasing our levy each year to offset rising costs or increased deferred maintenance, you can see that we're making no headway whatsoever, because there's about a $20-some thousand difference between 2021 and 2025. And the reason we're not making any headway is really we end up having to commit all of our extra levy to operations, because between the levy limit and expenditure restraint, we, even though some people may think that we have uncontrolled levy growth, we do live under a variety of levy controls, and when it comes to operations or maintenance, maintenance oftentimes loses. So we are not seeing much headway in this area. As I mentioned, we did have some deferrals. We had a couple of parking lots that are in need of reconstruction, and they've been on our list for quite a few years now. Sylvan Hill parking lot of $180,000, tennis court replacement of $340,000, the balance of the public safety building roof of $150,000, office repairs at DPW of $60,000, a truck scale for $140,000, LED lighting upgrades at DPW for $45,000, the architectural design of the new fire station of $700,000, a roof replacement at DPW of $80,000, Riverside Park parking lot of $170,000. This is the second year, so last year we deferred $150 of playground equipment, and now we're delaying more, so it's accumulating $230,000 of playground equipment, and then our asset management software of $150, so we've got about $2.2 million of deferrals this year. Does anyone have any questions about those budget items?
So, did we need so, is there any money at all then for playground equipment? I mean, is
Well,
that,
I guess if you wanted to, you know, as we approach the end of the budget, I think you'll find that our levy capacity will be exhausted with operations. So you would be forced, I guess, a couple of choices. One is to seek other revenue sources. Two would be to reprioritize our project. So, you know, kick off a project and replace it with playground equipment. Or the third would be to borrow for it, which would increase
Right.
costs in future years.
but
If I-
in the general budget itself, is there any, I mean, we just aren't spending any money next year on playground equipment?
Right.
If I recall correctly from capital planning, the playgrounds that would be slated for replacement are on the west side of town in those newer subdivisions, and I believe that they were installed in '07 and '09. So they're not the oldest playgrounds out there, and they still are, I believe they're still compliant to the most part. So if I recall, but they're not, the equipment's not failing, so. But we felt that it was, I think last year we held off a year, and this year we're holding off a year, so it's those last two playgrounds in the cycle that we haven't replaced yet.
Thank you.
So the next category, so as the CIP committee over the years struggled with increased deferrals, there was a thought to create a separate CIP where we would set aside funds for departments to replace those things that require ongoing maintenance so that they didn't need to compete with the regular CIP. And while that, in this area, you can see that we have budgeted $806,000, and we do try to provide for specific department needs. We have seen some growth here, but it isn't equitable amongst the departments. So police is the first category, $384,000. That saw the biggest jump in costs this year. You can see that the majority of it is for what I classified technology, which is their flock cameras, their personal cameras on their body cameras, radios, and their vests are in the equipment section. And then also they have $20,000 for any unexpected or low-cost facility maintenance needs, so that brings them to their $384,000. CCITC is really for the PCs that need replacing within City Hall or city facilities, as well as upgrades to phones, videos, and networks. This is usually a higher number, but we basically took some of the funds this year and moved them over to the capital budget. Since we were replacing the phone system, Jerry felt like we could decrease this and move it to the CIP area. So this, I think, was in past years $25,000 more than we're showing here. Fire has had about $55,000 set aside annually. This, again, would be for reoccurring things like hoses that need replacing, or ladders, things like that. A general government of $60,000 really is for a variety of facility maintenance things that come up. Engineering of $30,000 is for what do you call it, Alan?
Esri?
Esri software, and then Parks has their, what they call their small projects of 110,000. So an example of this would be the Oak Island bathroom replacement. Was that in small projects? Yeah. So, so this is how this fund is used, and I think for some departments it works well. It would be good if we could continue, you know, as you could see. It would be great if we could expand the use so that we didn't see, for example, roofs on our replacement schedule. But here, unlike the regular capital plan, here you can see our levy in 2020 was 475,000, and we have, that has increased on a steady note to 2025, where it's now going to be 806, 636. And some of the equipment, like for police, the flock, was funded in the first year with a grant, and then we took that over in future years. Yeah.
Sorry, can you go over the police technology, that 350,000, do we?
Todd is here, Deputy Chief Baton.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Sure, I can go over that. Did you want to do you want a breakdown of each of those sections that were in there? Or?
Well, just a general comment, you know, with
Sure.
regard to what makes up the 350,000.
Yeah, really the bulk of that one that I think has changed is the Axon contract. And if you recall, that was a 10-year contract that we entered into for digital evidence management system, including the body-worn cameras that officers are wearing, the taser devices, the electronic control devices that are used, digital evidence storage that includes interview room cameras for when detectives or investigators or officers are speaking with victims, witnesses, et cetera, that's all AV recorded and stored in a secure capacity. Squad cameras that encompasses really all of that. So I guess it's important to keep that piece in mind, that it isn't just the body cameras. It really is a comprehensive suite of services that we entered into this 10-year contract, which, pardon me, as it was explained to me, that's maybe not an anomaly, but I don't think it's super common that we've entered into a 10-year contract. And the reason we wanted to do that is the prices that we saw from the previous 5 years. We previously had a 5-year contract with Axon for similar services. In those intervening 5 years, by the end of that contract, the costs for those same services, really it probably boiled down to the storage of the evidence, had essentially doubled. And so by locking in this 10-year contract, we're really hopeful that over this next decade that we'll actually realize the savings instead of 5 years from now having to come and yet it's doubled again. So that's going to comprise really the bulk of that. And then the flock cameras in here, I do have Captain Graham here that can speak a little bit more to that, kind of the historical nature of that and what those are. But those are the automatic license plate reading cameras that we have at some key locations, intersections throughout the city. That allows us to, boy, we've had many different successes with that, locating stolen vehicles, vehicles that were being sought by law enforcement officials for a variety of reasons, so we could apprehend and head off and address criminal behaviors that are occurring or passing through, as it were, the city. And then the radio piece, that was, again, Captain Pauls is here and could speak to that a little bit more in detail, where we got on a rotation with our radio replacement. Now, these radios are the handheld portable radios that our officers are carrying, that they're issued. These radios are pretty advanced. They cost $5,000 a radio. So we're on a rotation where each year there's 10 radios that are being kind of cycled out before they get to the end of life. So that's where the bulk of those are coming from. The lab, Marianne, I'm not sure if you mentioned the lab in there.
The lab, yeah. Sorry, my bad.
There is a $20,000, it goes to this digital forensics lab. This is a joint endeavor between the police department, the sheriff's department, and others, and that is where Detective Anthony Rentz, who is one of our detectives on staff, where he conducts all these digital forensic kind of components to many cases that come in. So many cases nowadays involve cell phones, involve personal computers. For example, if there was some type of case involving inappropriate digital images on a computer, we have this capacity which involves specialized software and different tools to allow for documentation, storage, and maintaining evidence integrity of those things in those specific cases. But the technology we have seen certainly over the years is becoming more and more expensive. We recognize that. I don't know if, anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that basically covers the two general capital plans that help us provide services to the residents. Now we'll cover the tax increment districts. So tax increment district number 3, so this is on the east side of the river. Its expenditure period ends September of 2026, so it's in its last phase. And we had highlighted some of these projects in our 2025 budget, so we're just repeating them again this year. And they were, many of them in the capital plan, or in the last plan amendment that we did. So we've got remediation costs of $450,000. Generally, we expect to use this in the Wausau chemical and the water plant. $1.8 million for water plant demolition. We have the River's Edge Trail, Winton Street North of $500,000. The financial plan would anticipate 250 of that being from room tax funds and the balance coming from this district. And then we have several street projects, First Street River Drive, McIndoe Street to 300 feet north of Fulton, Second Street, Short Street to DeKalb, and Fulton Street, First Street to North 7th Street. Some redevelopment planning money of $100,000, parking on McIndoe Street, 4th to Franklin, and then Mall Street expansion. So as you know, we installed the street grid for the mall, which was the mall area, by doing the water and sewer and storm underneath, but we have to complete that. We have temporary streets down right now. That is actually in TID 12. We are proposing to do a project plan amendment to allow us to spend funds in TID 3 rather than in TID 12 because we feel like TID 3 right now has the financial capacity to do that, and we could just get that taken care of and over with. And then the final one is Jefferson Ramp improvements. We had $300,000 in the 24 budget, which was to be a phased project with everything else going on. They really kind of ran out of time on getting contract negotiated and executed, so we would do phase 1 and phase 2 in 2025. So that becomes $600,000. So $9.6 million worth of projects in this district. And then on the next slide, oh, go ahead. Yeah. Sorry. That's okay.
Okay, I have a couple questions. Water plant demolition, who's doing that for 1.8 million? It seems high.
So we have not bid that contract out. That was an estimate that Eric got.
Wow.
And I think there is a lot of sort of complexity. I
There's
don't
a
know.
lot of concrete in there, isn't there?
Yeah. Right, there's the water, there's a big storage tank underground. So, yeah, that's the main part of it. And obviously it's below groundwater, so to get that out of there is gonna be a task. To get the underground storage tank removed. It's all concrete. So I think that's the majority of that cost.
Okay, next thing is the River Edge Trail. Definitely that's coming next year, the 500,000?
I think that was the plan.
That's the plan. But there's a lot of different things. We were talking about this particular project today. Still need to iron out the railroad crossing with the railroad, obviously, to make that project happen. But if everything were to go the way we want it to, we would be working on this and have this built next year.
Okay. Next question is the parking.
Yes.
What parking is for McIndoe and Franklin?
I believe this is the YMCA provision.
Has that been passed?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The YMCA parking?
Right.
I don't know.
Have we, I mean, I didn't think council weighed in on that yet, or have we? I don't,
I'm not sure if they did. I know there was, you're talking about the parking along McIndoe Street
Yeah.
that to allow,
We did Fourth, I don't know if we did this.
Mostly for.
yeah, mostly Fourth already, but
It was at SISM, or Infrastructure and Facilities.
Oh,
Yeah, it was 4th Street and
did it go through council?
a couple diagonals. I think it was in a consent agenda.
No, I'm,
I think the Fourth Street parking went through council.
Is
but I
that
don't- I don't-
diagonal?
Fourth
I mean, the
Street.
diagonal? I didn't think we talked about that, did we? Maybe I'm missed.
I don't think McIndoe went through council yet, but Fourth Street went through council.
That's my recollection, and I would double check that
yeah,
one.
and Aaron
Yeah.
will be back on Monday.
Okay,
So
well, I guess I just, yeah, I know there's been some, I'm gonna try to be, there's been some pushback from residents on this, and so I just wanted to know, I didn't know that that was, a can-do, put in the budget type of thing.
We'll definitely be able to respond to that on Monday.
Okay, all right, thanks, those are my questions, go ahead, Gary.
Chad, do you have something?
Yeah, I know all of them went through, it might have even been back when it was SISM, but it was right near that transition period from to new council. Not 100% sure if it came to council or not.
but the whole plan, the whole parking with regard to Yawkey Park, that whole plan, as far as I remember, did not come through city council.
Yeah, my recollection was around the corners around Franklin, that dedication of right-of-way, that we did, but the rest, I'm fuzzy on the rest of it. So, which parts went through council? But the dedication portion did, which was around Fourth and Franklin. Guess we'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, we
so.
will definitely be prepared on Monday for
Okay.
that.
If there's nothing else, let's continue.
So then looking at the cash flow of the district, the 9.6 million of capital projects, some of that would be paid with cash from the district. We'd anticipate about 7.4 million of it being borrowed, which we would then pay over the next 7 years, so that by the time the district was ready to retire, all of the debt would be paid off, and we would maintain you know, a steady balance in the district going forward. So we don't see any big problems funding this and getting these projects done and really preparing that Wausau Chemical and water plant site for redevelopment sometime in the future. So TID 6.
Just one question.
yeah.
So I don't see it on the slide, but on page 16 in here, it's got the valuation of the
Oh,
district.
yeah.
What? They seem to fluctuate quite often, like they don't always go up.
They
or-
don't always go up. I was gonna bring that up. So the valuation this year is kind of confusing, because if you recall, they eliminated personal property. So that is one of the main drivers of why you'll see decreases in some of the districts, is because that is no longer considered a value, but we're being compensated by the state then through state aids for that lost PP tax. So in many of the districts, you'll see a drop that is related to that, as well as, you know, when we did our revaluation, commercial property did not see the growth that some of our residential did. And so there was some, I guess, realignment there too.
When you say personal property,
So in Wisconsin,
It's a business
paid-
business personal property.
right, they had
Okay.
to submit a return every year that listed all of their equipment and anything they used to conduct business, and then they paid a tax on that.
Okay.
And that was considered personal property.
all right, so that's what that format.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, business equipment, personal property
Yes.
tax. It's-
Yep.
it's-
Thank you.
And so the state eliminated that and basically gave us state aids to offset that.
And I see the other big drop in valuation started in '09 through '13, so that would have been the fallout from the Great Recession,
Yes.
I would guess.
Yes, and then there was, and years ago, the state exempted all computers too. So
Yeah.
at that point, we had a drop in values as well, and we still today get an aid for when they removed computers from the PP tax.
Yeah, and they also exempted machine equipment,
Yes.
manufacturing equipment, but I would imagine that TID 3 would not have
Right.
many manufacturers, so that wouldn't have
Right.
much of an effect.
Exactly.
So,
Yep, and there you can see in the cash flow, the 250 would be coming from the room tax fund. So tax increment district number 6, last night you passed a resolution to terminate that district. And really, so we have no new expenses. We retired the debt, will be retired in 2025, but wanted to show that when that increment is generated in the 2025 budget, we'll be able to use about 4.9 million for affordable housing projects. So we'll be transferring 4.9 into a special fund to finance affordable housing, and it will stay in that fund and be depleted as we spend it. So, and then that district will be closed. TID 7 is in a similar situation to TID 6 in that it is also done with projects and has exhausted or paid off all of its debt. We, the Common Council and the Joint Review Board approved a donation, a 3-year donation period, 23, 24, and 25. So 2025 will be the last year of donation. Those proceeds from TID 7 are going to TID 12, and they have basically paid for the demolition and other costs associated with eliminating the mall, getting the facade set for home furniture, those kinds of things. So this year, we will need to make a decision, or council will need to make a decision, if you want to go to the next slide, of what you want to do next. So you would be able to add a year for affordable housing. You could seek 2 more years of donation for TID 12, or you could vote to close the district. So we'll be bringing that back to council for consideration on what the next step would be for that district. And, with the closure of TID 12, we have been above our 12%. Is it 12% now, Randy, or is it 15? 12, yeah. Our 12% TID limit, so we were not allowed to create a district or expand districts. We will now fall below that limit, not saying that we're like chomping at the bit to create a district or anything, but just for informational purposes, we will now be below that level, so that will be a good thing.
yeah, that's very good news that we're finally getting our head above water.
Yeah. Tax increment district number 8, again, we're seeing some repeat projects we had in the '24 budget that didn't get accomplished. The Washington Street retaining wall and the Washington Street siphon project. I think, is one of those out for bid right now? Alan, do you know? Okay, it's getting ready to go, okay. So it's in the 24 budget, but we're putting it back in the 25 because we likely won't experience any expenses in the 24 budget. Concrete repairs of $350,000. We also did a similar project in 24. That was included in the project plan. And then the West Riverfront land acquisition of $2.5 million. This is a return of this idea to purchase the MBX property. As you know, we had been looking at that for the Public Works facility, as well as it will facilitate expansion of the River Edge Trail, and it would have suitable use for housing, such as affordable housing. But we're not promising it. So we think that there is good use for that expansion.
So then is that for the West Riverfront, the MBX? How are we going to make a decision with regard to public works facilities? Is that, do we know how we're going to come to some kind of an agreement? Or is there a plan? In other words, Randy, is there a plan in your office to carry this out?
A plan is kind of a strong word. We've got some concepts that we're looking at and ways that we might be able to make some different things work. Both those MBX properties have been for sale, and they've been for sale for some time. We've talked about what the advantage is, what potential uses we would have for them. As Mary Ann stated, the trails, those are two of the big gaps that we have in the trail along there, and that's been an ongoing conversation that we've been looking at, specifically the MBX South site, where based on what the owner is willing to do with an easement, it would be very expensive for us to build the trail on the ledge, and there's just, the topography of it makes it very difficult. So it may be advantageous for the city to purchase the property, be able to build the trail on top of the bluff at a much cheaper cost, and then look at redevelopment of that south property. Eric has been working and looking at the north piece. The problem is there's a parking lot for a private business that really sits in the middle of that. And without that, he doesn't look at that as a viable site for public works. But it's something we're continuing to look at and see what opportunities are out there to potentially obtain that parking lot, or also build the trail through there. So just because we're putting in the budget doesn't mean that we're going to be able to move forward with it, but we want to be prepared that if and when possibility comes through, that we have the money available to make it happen.
Thank you.
Well, go ahead.
Thanks for the update, because I know that it came to INF about that northern parcel being used, and we gave an okay to explore it further and see logistics and everything else involved with that, so thanks for the update.
I was just curious as to where we are, because if I know that parking lot, and if that does present an issue, then that's just good to know. Thank you.
So again, looking at what the impact of that would be to the district itself, overlaying the existing debt retirement with a new issue of $4 million to offset those capital costs, you could see that there would be a sufficient revenue stream to retire that debt without impacting reserves that wouldn't cause any deficits there in the district. And then just as far as informational purposes, we do have a final payment to 1401 Elm Street for the first apartment, the old bowling alley, I forgot what it was.
Mountain Lanes.
Mountain Lanes, yeah. We have the final payment in 2024 for developer payments, and then in 2025, we owe Banter $250,000, and that would be our final developer obligation in this district. So, I guess that's, we would, retirement of the debt would be affordable for the district's purpose.
And that TID's set to expire 2036?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I also think that district in 2026 plans on reconstructing 8th Avenue. Is that the, yeah. And that was in the project plan.
Well, what part of 8th Avenue?
Alan?
Alan?
I don't have the exact streets. Between Stewart and Bridge.
Yeah.
The whole way?
No,
Oh, okay.
it's like from Elm to Bridge. I believe. It's in the
Okay.
5-year plan.
Okay. I'll brush that off later.
So TID 9, this is the brewery district. I've really just put, we don't have any additional expenses for the district besides the regular administrative costs. It did retire its final debt payment in 2023, but we do have ongoing deficits. We reached the largest deficit at the end of 2023, and you can see there's some tax increment and then some aid payments that we get from the state. But even without them making any of their loan payment, as long as there's some increment there, we will be able to cash flow the district by the time of its retirement.
If we recover anything from the brewery, would that be obligated back to the TID?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. Tax increment district number 10 is out in the business campus. It did some big projects this year along Stewart and 70, I don't know, what was that project, Alan, the big project going on out there? 72nd Avenue, or Stewart Avenue, the big Stewart Avenue project.
Right from 48 to 72nd.
Yes.
DOT project.
Yep, so that, this district paid for that this year, and then in '23, they did the, I don't know, some sort of sewer thing. What was the sewer thing that they had to do? Force main, big force main. So, this year, it really has, only 50,000 for, some signage, and then just retiring its existing debt. TID 11 is the east-west trail connection project of 520,000 and then signage of 50,000. TID 11 is the Great Lakes cheese expansion. And we'll be making the fifth or sixth payment to Great Lakes Cheese in '25. There are 10 payments, plus we owe up to $500,000 in like remediation type work, and they did provide documentation of that. You can see that this district is doing pretty good. We have a couple of maybe small deficit under $300,000 on an annual basis for a short period of time, but otherwise it is doing great. It's a lot of project costs here. TID 12 is really the only district that there is some financial concern. As I said, this district was put in place to help with the mall, and we really haven't seen any increment come in. We've got about $400-some thousand of increment, but we've had a lot of expenses. And while the T-wall project is great, we did commit a lot of the increment to the project itself, and so there's not going to be a huge return. So this district is paying for those costs, as well as when we moved Wausau Chemical from its river site out to the business campus, this district and TID 11 shared those costs. And so here we're struggling to recover. I am planning to talk to Quarles to see if we could shift some of the costs for Wausau Chemical to TID 11 from this district, since TID 11 has some extra capacity, and that would help to clear up some of the accumulated deficits in this district, but really no new capital costs in 2025. We are expecting to finish paying our obligations to WAS in 2024 through their final draws. And then we do have a developer agreement with Mark McDonald for some work that he did on one of his buildings. And we have payments due in 25, 26, and 27, and then that developer obligation will be eliminated. So yeah, as far as developer payments in the 2025 budget, as I said, we have Great Lakes Cheese, Mac and Don, and then the Banter. And then looking at the wastewater and water capital budgets, these were reviewed by the Water Commission at their last meeting. Obviously, anytime we're doing big curb, gutter, and pavement projects, we're replacing the utility infrastructure underneath. So Cherry Street, Randolph, Fulton, First and Second all show up here, and the utility would likely be seeking Clean Water Fund loan for those projects. The mall-related utility would be paid by tax increment district number 3. The wastewater also is contemplating purchasing a new sludge hauling piece of equipment. The Cherry Street lift station of 1.1 million. Eric did submit ARPA request at our last meeting yesterday, so it would help finance that. The cell amplification project would come from operations. Slip lining is something that they do every year and would be funded by their operating revenues. The Washington Street siphon project, that was included in TID 3, TID 8, excuse me. And then the Headworks project we discussed quickly last night too, saying that that project came in under budget, and that's why we were asking to reallocate the $800,000 of ARPA to the Cherry Street lift station. So that covers the wastewater projects for 2025. And then the water projects, again, the same street projects that would be funded through safe drinking water. Anything related to underground for the mall would be funded by TID 3. The SCADA equipment, this was presented to finance last night to fund it out of ARPA because they didn't spend all of their lead replacement funds. The Elm Booster Station and water tank rehab would come out of operations, and then the meter replacement we put on here, that's the $800,000 that you already approved out of ARPA. So that takes care of that capital budget. And so that basically covers our capital. Like I said, we'll be covering the motor pool capital on Monday.
Okay. Is that it? Do we have any questions on the capital budget? I know you mentioned, Marianne, TID 12 is the one that's struggling, but
Yeah.
most of the property within that TID is along the riverfront. So when that development gets going, that's
That
when
could help,
we will start to see the
Yes,
increment on
that's true.
in that TID. So that's
Yep.
I didn't look at the map. Does that include the West Side Battery one, or is that just on the east side of the
Well, it
river?
would just be on the east side.
Okay.
West Side Battery is in TID 8.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Any other questions on the capital presentation? Otherwise, if not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys meeting. I know it's hard.
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, a motion from Henke, a second from McElhaney, and all those in favor say aye. Aye. And we're adjourned. This is the easy of the 3 meetings.
Are we joking that we'd be done in an hour?
There's a lot of stuff in here.